Welcome to another production of Source Selection Soundbites. These productions foster learning, insight, and the ability to perform. Today's topic is Past Performance Evaluation Nuances. Today we will discuss 3 nuances of the past performance evaluation. Topics include trade-offs and neutral past performance ratings, adverse past performance and its evaluation consequences, and the doctrine of too close at hand. In Past Performance Nuances Part 1, we learned that the neutral rule keeps the government from penalizing vendors without relevant past performance, so the lack of a performance record would not be a barrier to entering the government contracting market. This rule covers non-relevant and non-existent past performance. The question becomes, are there any protections for vendors with neutral past performance ratings in the trade-off process? The answer is no, because a trade-off compares all benefits and pricing before making a source selection decision. So trading off a neutral rating against a higher rating is not unfavorable treatment. As you can see here, there are many judicial decisions that have made this point. Now we are switching gears to adverse past performance. According to the AFARS and GAO case law, the definition of adverse past performance is information that supports a less than satisfactory rating on any evaluation element or any unfavorable comment received from sources without a formal rating system. Let's emphasize a key point. Adverse past performance is not only a rating below satisfactory, but it is also any unfavorable comment. This definition says the unfavorable comment come from sources without a formal rating system. However, unfavorable comments may also be buried within a narrative where the formal overall rating is satisfactory or higher. Even so, the unfavorable comment still counts as adverse past performance. The reason it is critical to recognize adverse past performance is that it has consequences within the source selection process. At times, the agency is required to provide the opportunity to respond to adverse past performance to which the contractor has not had the opportunity to respond. The first consequence is in reference to clarifications. When discussions are not conducted, the agency is not required to provide an opportunity to respond to adverse past performance via clarifications. There are 2 exceptions to this. 1, when the agency has reason to doubt the veracity of the information, and 2, when the solicitation expressly provides that an opportunity will be given to respond to adverse past performance. On the other hand, when the agency decides to conduct discussions, it must provide the vendor an opportunity to address adverse past performance to which it has not had an opportunity to respond. A situation where this could arise is when evaluators use their personal knowledge of the vendor's performance to evaluate it. In that situation, the vendor has not had the opportunity to respond. Thus, it must be granted. Sometimes, the vendor has already had the opportunity to respond, and it is obvious on the past performance questionnaire because the rater explains why its agency rejected or agreed with the contractor's arguments. In addition, when a CPARS rating is more than a few months old, the agency can be sure that a vendor has had the opportunity to respond. There are several exceptions to evaluating adverse past performance. First, in order to evaluate the adverse past performance, the agency must be aware of it. The agency is not required to source past performance information about an offeror. However, if the agency is aware of it, the agency must consider it in their evaluation, unless it is determined not to be relevant. The doctrine of too close at hand holds that some information is simply too close at hand to require offers to shoulder the inequities that spring from the agency's failure to obtain and consider the information. This doctrine assumes that the agency has knowledge of and access to the information, but failed to consider it. Given that the vendor is not at fault in this situation, but the failure lies in the government's inaction, the GAO will sustain a protest against the agency. This rule applies to positive and negative past performance information. The too close at hand doctrine applies to at least 3 circumstances. 1, where the contract involves the same agency, same services, and the same procuring activity. 2, where highly relevant information is known to the evaluators or the contracting officer. And 3, past performance questionnaires in the agency's possession are also too close at hand to ignore. As with most rules, there are several exceptions to the too close at hand doctrine. Contractor reference performed as a subcontractor. This would mean the agency procuring activity did not award the contract. So if the agency had no information related to the contractor's performance on the contract, the doctrine of too close at hand is inapplicable. Another exception to the rule is general agency knowledge. The doctrine is applied to specific agency employees involved in the source selection process, so general agency knowledge is not sufficient to invoke the doctrine. The last exception is if the contractor wants a specific contract to be considered, they must include a reference to it in its proposal. If it does not, the contractor can't hold the agency responsible for reviewing a contract for relevant performance that it did not identify in its proposal. Here are some of the references we used to write the contents of the video. You can review and use this material at your leisure. To wrap things up, let's review what we discussed. We discussed that it is not unfavorable treatment to trade off between a vendor with a neutral and a higher value rating. Second, we discussed the evaluation consequences of adverse past performance. And third, we discussed the application of the too close at hand past performance doctrine. Thank you for watching another episode of Source Selection Soundbites. For additional information, check out some of the other videos in this series, other Productivity Partners materials, or our Source Selection Answer app that is available on the Google Play Store and Apple Store. In any event, thanks for watching, and see you next time.